what is happening to our attention and our ability to focus, and how addictive we're becoming to the peptides of technology, or the next, the next like, or the next email, or the next thing coming in, that we're chasing that, and our attention is kind of captured by that. And that's really mirroring, or is exactly, addiction, right? Like that's a loss of our attention, a loss of our own agency of where we're putting our attention and all that stuff. And so codependency is similar in that it's often underneath a dysfunction that can lead to addiction, really big. So the way I talked about it on the podcast, and I'll just say it again, is it's really the lost self, okay? And so it's when we don't act from our innate self, and instead we organize our thinking or our focus, our attention, we organize that around other people, substances, or processes. So when we're talking about it around classic addiction, that would be like if you're obsessing about alcohol, right? Like that's a form of like losing yourself to alcohol. It's also addiction, clearly, but there's a loss of yourself in that. Like you may not even know anymore like what matters to you most. For some of us, a different way that can show up is when we're way too concerned with what other people think about us. We've lost ourselves, right? We lose ourselves to what other people think, or in romantic relationships and things like that, our partner's concerns are so much louder than our own concerns. And if you ask a codependent person, like, what would make you happy? Quite often the answer is, well, if my wife was happy, or if my partner was happy, I'd be amazing. Right. So it's very far reaching, but it is at the core, it is this loss of ourself. And again, like so many of these things that are psychological, it's really hard to see. Like this could be your biggest problem and you have no idea that this is what's going on for you at all. It's incredibly subtle. Right. So it sometimes takes a big wake up. Sometimes it takes working with somebody and somebody else pointing it out. The more that you are steadfast in your mindset, the more that you're not concerned what other people say, do, or think about you, right? The less enmeshed you are with other people. And enmeshment is a term in codependency, but I'm using it. Maybe it's not that, right? But if we start to lose ourselves to what other people think or how they do, or we can't hold boundaries, right? We can't say, hey, this is important. Let's say they're just being jerks and they're being loud. Holding boundaries and being able to say like, no, I need quiet, or I'm going to choose to walk away even if they're going to think I'm uncool, or whatever that stuff is, means that we're bringing back our needs and our self-reference of how we're guiding ourselves back to ourselves, right? Back to what really matters to us. Again, why that's subtle and difficult for a codependent person is we might say, yeah, I'm bringing it back to myself, but what the real motivation is underneath is that somebody else isn't going to be mad at me, or it'll make my family happier, or whatever that is, right? So this is incredibly subtle, it's incredibly difficult, and it has a ton of implications that are really bad. So the go-to move here is to begin the dialogue. I mean, the go-to move could be therapy, it could be coaching, it could be getting help, clearly. But with someone else or on your own, the go-to move here is to really regain what matters to me, really, like me, what really matters. And relationship is a part of that for sure, right? My partner's needs matter to me to whatever degree, but do I know why I'm connected to it and what's important for me about that? And then starting to set and enforce over time, even at the expense of other people not liking you, because independent and codependent people don't normally hook up, because codependent people bother the shit out of independent people, and there's not enough drama with independent people for the codependent to hook onto. So it's like, what the fuck? So the codependent is either hanging out with other people whose boundaries suck, and everybody's over in everybody else's business and over worried about each other and all that shit, right? Or they're with like an addict, which also has all that going on, but there's what's really obvious is the addiction, okay? But so if you really wake up from your codependency, chances are all your relationships, and you've probably been teaching to your kids, and you probably have friends that are doing it, and the whole nine is everybody's all enmeshed. And so all of a sudden you have to set these boundaries, and guess what? You look like an asshole, right? And that's the concern, because you don't have a great total sense of self. And so you're super concerned. Like, I don't want to look like a dick, right? I don't want to be an ass. So now I'm wrestling because I know I'm supposed to be fighting for myself. I wish I could hold this boundary, but I just can't. I keep letting my wife, my partner, my whoever storm all over my boundaries. And what boundaries look like really is reasonably going, hey, here's my line. Here's when, to a kid, here's when your bedtime is. And like holding to that. I see a lot of parents like not hold to bedtimes because the kid's going to throw a tantrum. And so, all right, you can have 15 more minutes or whatever. You're letting these boundaries slip, right? Boundaries in your food is, how are you really going to feed yourself? we're not talking about perfection, but we're talking about an effort of setting, really honoring, like thinking about, caring about, like, what are my boundaries? Like, what really matters to me?